Post it on Facebook. I've been posting it to the high school and college group.
It's on the high school. It's on the college. Okay, hey y'all, I don't have a timer. So, do you want to borrow one? I have mine. Yeah, you just close it up.
Two layers.
Sarah, do you mind putting that link for people? Of course. What do you want me to do with it?
Just comment it on that website if you don't mind. Very good. What happens? You'll back answer. Some wind up dead like Huey, some like Mumio languish in prison, but few like a Cedar Shakur taking the path from on a slave who slipped off plantation-free jungle communities known as the Palenques. Shakur was described as the sole Black Liberation Army. In 1973, and son and two friends were pulled over by state troopers. A shooting ruptured a trooper. One alleged to be a lame member was killed. One was severely wounded. During the next 6 years, Shakur beat half another dozen indictments. In 1979, Shakur managed most impressive jailbreaks in the year. In 1984, word came to 90 miles off the coast of Florida. The FBI's most wanted female fugitive living in Cuba, raising her daughter. We begin our affirmation of the topic with the story of Wayzata Shakur, America's 20th century runaway slave who's found in the silent Palenque of Cuba, but runaway slaves are not free. Wanted dead or alive, his honest bounty has been raised from 1 million in 2005 to 2 million in May this year. This is not the first instance of economic engagement between the U.S. and Cuba. Two countries now for nearly 300 years shared history, shared deals for black flesh. Instead of assuming the position from nowhere, advocate by the resolution must have the century vows of economic engagement, political life are tainted by the close connection, birth markets, transatlantic slavery. To understand our current economic engagement with Cuba must begin with the sale of trade of black flesh. A supreme form of economic engagement. It's either dark hole of space of slave ship where Africans were blackened and reborn as slaves who would toil on the sugar plantations of Cuba. As one of the last countries to formally abolish the slave trade, Cuba shares a unique relationship regarding the exchange accumulation of black flesh in the United States. A stopover point between the Americas, Cuba became a popular destination for slaves. Even after slavery was outlawed in the United States, only landowners set up plantations to exploit U.S. souls while still taking advantage of free labor. However, the violence is not end with slavery. Black blood was banned on plantations to oil, provide the nourishment for coffee, sugar, tobacco, U.S. society well into the 20th century. When the peace done, the wealthy Cuban plantation over struck deals the U.S. and maintained the exploitation of the Afro-Cuban population while maintaining racial segregation. And this relationship between Assad and the U.S. government and Cuba can be characterized by the anonymization of the body and the separation from human personality and flesh. In the government's language, Assad's value is reduced to 120 pounds of money. This represents the horror Spillers calls the grammar of suffering, provides the fabric of anti-blackness, social political structure of the New World. The new world represents an actual scene of mutilation, dismemberment, pipe mark from the fat body, the willful, violent cat body from its mother will cat body comes to this order to destructive centrality, same to the cat body reduces to a thing more general powers is resonating through the various centers of human social media distinction between the body and the flesh is central and the capital liberated body positions there's a flesh theory degree social conceptualization, even though the European Japanese of the body said social repairability is a crime against the flesh is the primary narrative rift apparatus, create the distance of culture, rebel stability and culture, state, protocol is search to ensure the flesh's concentration of ethnicity, contemporary critical discourse neither acknowledge or throw away. The profit of not using the capital body another angle and the divided flesh will lose any hint of suggestion dimension of ethics between human personality and its optimal features between human personality and cultural institutions. The captive body has been liberated through ruling amnesty from its ground of originating metaphors of captivity. The American grammar begins at the beginning, which is really the rupture of violent formation, modern African consciousness. And this system can only be rightly described as a war against black people fought through extreme forms of gratuitous violence, in other words, terror. This is why Asada's place on the FBI's most wanted terror list is telling. It says the state did not pursue Asada for the crimes she may or may not have committed because the society founded or relying against anti-black terror is a terrifying one to fight back, to refuse to submit to the hopeless negativity. This line of thought reveals two dangerous secrets. One, the with us or against them terrorism policy did not start with Bush, but rather has been the de facto relationship between the U.S. and civil society since the very inception of America. Two, the figure of the black revolutionary terrorist, the civil society's representative complete existential collapse. That's Mumia of Jamal 5. The U.S. government has been branding Asada terrorists to justify the modern-day slave bid. If anybody knows anything about terrorists, this nation was founded on terrorism. This truth lies in almost every American being allergic with unnerving ease to label this woman. Terrorists was bleed all me for the word she was terrorized by. The system wanted to punish her during to rebel Asada stale for daring to describe nothing assertive American purely this gave a slave for daring to slipper bonds escape from brutal injustice bondage to the empire that labels her terrorists. Now to them there's nothing more terrifying than the resistance to their imperial will. And the words of Asada, the only path forward is to politically educate and organize the masses of black people and win their hearts and minds. Revolutionary wars are protracted warfare. Shakur's words resonate strongly in the 21st century context of winning the hearts and the minds has been the counterinsurgency strategy of the U.S. occupation of the Middle East. Thus, instead of arguing for non-racialized definitions of criminality or terrorism, Shakur called for military action response. Instead of rejecting the criminal frame, she takes a statement in terms of owning and arming the positionality of the act of performative reversal. Asada spoke the following words in the court, we speak in the debate space. I declared war on all the forces that have raped our women, castrated our men, or kept our babies empty-bellied. I declared war on the rich who prosper over poverty, the politicians who lied to us on the mindless, heartless road to protect them. I am a black revolutionary. By definition, that makes me part of the Black Liberation Army. They call us murderers, but we do not control the system of race and suppression that systematically murders black and rural people. They call us kidnappers, but we did not kidnap the Thousand Brother system held captive in America's concentration camps. They call us these bandits. It was not us who stole millions of people from the black people from the continent of Africa. Every revolution in history has been accomplished by action, though words are unnecessary. We are created by a condition shaped by our oppression. In the spirit of Asada, Shakur vote affirmative because only our performance gets us heart of U.S. Cuban economic engagement, past, present, and future. The resolution asks us to increase economic engagement without considering the fact that accumulation and exchange of black flesh is central to any future engagement. By affirming the representation of Asada as a terrorist, we raise the stakes of symbolic game, affirmation, reciprocal designation of terrorist acknowledges the black freedom and America antagonistic to each other. Affirming the revolutionary ethics of Asada opens space for a beloved community. Revolutionary backbone is a community that can combat the racist, sexist, capitalist nature of anti-black terror. That's true, James 13. Within the United States, black resistance has been passed as military security everyone accommodation with the defiance has been from state Angel Davis, for some liberals work in the system, such as Shakur's escape from prison validates conviction, Shakur's political life, reworks and use of narrative de-radicalizing tendencies of testimony, insurrectionist. She bears one its unsurprising insurrection, slave fugitive. Shakur represents the unbraceable who the state can't exercise severe sanctions. Shakur clinches political embracement for the politicians and conservative politicians, those who did work underground. See Shakur's self-liberation, affirmation, political issues, practicalities, and resistance. Asada depicts a personality hard compatible with commodization. Those who romanticize political and revolutionary violence offers a portrait of a woman so committed to black freedom she refused to reject the armed struggle strategy to attain it even during violent upheavals. Community remains essential for Shakur. She rides up on people's war that excludes vanguard. Some people that they can pick up arms. Those people begin to see their struggle themselves the most important factor in the armed struggle. Never itself bring about a revolution. Revolutionary war is a people's war. Strikingly with specificity oppression of women revolution, strikingly unique forms of containment radiate black women radiate beyond the prison walls. Shakur maintains that women's liberation is predicated off a liberated country and culture. Let us rebuild a sense of community. Let us rebuild a sense of culture, carrying on the tradition of fierce determination, move closer to freedom. And the role of that decide which forms of political class engagement are best suited for revolutionary action against anti-black terror. The beloved community enables construction agreement that makes sense of black suffering. The Troy James 13. The concept of beloved communities are phenomenally comes as black freedom, someone suddenly imprinted slave diaspora effects, multiple forms of communication, creativity of anti-black race and political prison, black suffering has become familiar backdrop to every reality, no existence political phenomenon. This is the irony of the paradox. Political resistance can kill you, but beloved community can save you, not from physical death, from meaningless death and despair. One does not negotiate with the state on terms of terror. To post it in that opposition finds meaning in suffering. What is black death political phenomenon? We exert political past and death, assassination, just appearances far removed from our motive and intellectual importance and more personal lives. We're troubled by current black suffering organized by racially driven state. Your language is rarely considered political when we speak of the fragmentation, challenges of fragmentation just members of the beloved community. Should there be a limit to suffering? The redemptive kind. Shakur answers yes. Shakur survives to tell the tale of black suffering, resistance, state and restless community. Asking more in the present. State violence spend their furthest bodies organizing and the beloved community. We belong to a beloved community is extensive, vile, bottomless bag of dirty tricks. Most political prisoners are not easily cannot be easily interwoven to everyday history. Most political prisoners are not pacifists. They will not be mainstream and sanitized. What is our relationship to that political violence and quest for freedom? The beloved community. We know that suffering unfolds itself, yet we still lack a shared common language for political violence. Black suffering, black resistance are conditioned by white supremacy, imperialism, capitalism, homophobia, patriarchy, female child sufferings. We share universality with the particularities of black suffering, suggest this wildness we've experienced has lasted way too long.
Does the 1AC endorse the beloved community?
Our argument is that M and I represent the beloved community. We think that
You represent the beloved community.
we
Yeah,
don't
sorry,
represent
continue.
the beloved community.
Yeah.
Our Joy James evidence highlights that the beloved, like, do you want to know what the beloved community is?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, the Joy James evidence highlights the beloved community are revolutionaries committed to resisting anti-black violence and manifests itself through the forms of capitalism, homophobia, patriarchy, sexism.
So who is a member of the beloved community?
Our argument is that the role of the ballot means to have a methodology about which arguments are best suited to resist anti-black violence. We say that if you provide a different methodology, we think that people in the beloved community discuss methodologies best suited to resist anti-black violence.
Okay, so who is in the beloved community?
I just told you what a member of the beloved community would look like, how you would enact yourself in a beloved community. That seems to answer your question.
How would someone act in a beloved community?
I just told you. They would be what our Joy James highlights as a member of the beloved community.
So what would that member do to break down resistance?
The beloved community creates a group of people.
Mhm.
Em and I say that we are a good representation of what that would look like. We
Okay,
say
so
that
does
we
this, do you mind if I ask? Does
Yeah, go
this beloved community have coalitions?
I don't know what you define coalitions.
What
I
is
think
the
that's kind
tactics
of
of the beloved community to, resolve racism and white supremacy that we
The
see
Joy
everywhere?
James evidence highlights that when we have a universality of suffering, when we can understand the particularities of what problems that are conditioned by black suffering, we can create a politics to resist that.
So,
It's not
so what is the
coalitional-
politics to resist that? I mean, how are we ever
say a
supposed to
beloved
break down white
community is
supremacy
a
if we're
politics.
not, do we have to yell at white people or what do we do? Like, do we not yell at white people?
It's not a force against white people. We say that there is a system in the status quo that conditions black suffering.
Yes.
We think that we should create a community capable of resisting that suffering. I don't see
How would they resist that community?
Em and I say in the debate space we are
Yes.
capable of resisting violence that happens for we
How
are.
do you do that, Q?
What do you mean? How do we do that?
How are you
discussions.
resisting that violence?
How are we resisting the violence?
Yes. How does a member resist that violence?
We think that we can understand suffering that happens in debate because we have a community of doing that. I think that we make friendships in debate.
Yeah.
I think that we make communities in debate that translate into my everyday life. I don't know if you saw people who are helping us for free, stuff like that. We make coalitions to understand things that happen in our everyday lives.
Can I become in that community?
I just highlighted what the beloved community would look
So
like.
can I become in that
If
community?
you
That's
are-
a yes or no question.
If you
What do
follow
I have to
what
do
it
to be in
means
the
to be a
community?
beloved community, which I highlighted what our Joy James evidence says would be a member of the beloved community, and you provide a methodology best capable of resisting anti-black
No, I want to be in your methodology. How do I fit your methodology?
to provide. We think that the beloved community isn't just that we all agree
I'll take
racism
cross-ex
is
question.
bad.
I'll take cross-ex question.
Yeah.
What can I do to be part of your method?
I just highlighted what the
Have
Joy
a methodology debate
debate.
with us.
Talk to us about which methodology is best suited
Okay.
to resist anti-black violence. I
10
said that
seconds.
50.
Cool.
I'm just gonna flash it. It'll be going off just in case. Okay. The notion of a community emerges from the elevation of a universal term. This process necessitates the sacrifice of difference and subjectivity to create the outside contours that makes the notion of a community intelligible, compatible to Western social order, sacrifice materiality and difference, reduced to static government term is elevated or good of ideal, and others reduced to the constitutive and diverse and intelligible idea standards, which depends on the reduction of the permanent material and considered inner matter, whose constitutive and exclusion states the intellectual suppressing and alternative standards of as a group upon the progression of the intellectual world occurs. The sacrifice of a more changing systems not the current power does the institutor study singular model subjectivity subjectivized with the universal dividing of material subjectivity becomes less superficial and single model subjectivity denies the existence of others. As a structure of sacrifice denies the paradise of superficial to the violence of the growing group of terms sees permanency and means the conditions of its own existence. The affirmative perpetuates the structure of sacrifice, performing the elimination of difference in two ways. First, the position of the identity of black bodies as the result of the physical and ontological death paradox. They works to limit difference among black communities by foreclosing the possibility of thinking black identity as something that exists external to a system of violence. McKendrick in 11. Anti-blackness remains the focus of humanity, humanist and racial elements to derive about the intellectual work of honoring complex racial narratives and the historical links death and blacks as a place can be paradoxically undermined and forming racial violence, limited exception of race and limited exception of the plantation frails, blackness and recognizably faceless and degraded, and therefore just apply for that which common sense outcome of analytical queries that was and evidence of my plantation past. Second, their belief in the primacy of race as the ontological structure that determines modern society reduces the identity of woman to an add-on to a racialized subject. This means the community that you vote for is ultimately tied to the ontological reduction of gender to something that is secondary. Birchner in 95 sees the belief towards the hierarchy race over gender state reductionism leads some sort of support and function of the object of society systematic understatement of exclusions in a group of present formulation of a colonial relation to black white men and really reveals homosocial qualifies women according to race and just about interests and effects of sexual difference while discussing the issue through allows to defer the problem and develop the discourse without considering sexual difference of women's subjectivity to gender comes to mean in such a case of woman rather than something fundamental to the constitution of race identity, the construction of femininity, masculinity, by supposing the racial subject formation, psychoanalytic models, gender differentiation, which is the ways in which race, gender, music, and construction of the relationship between white men and black men are relationships that meditate through women's bodies, rules feminine subjectivity, the center of the analysis of mission confirms women roles and applications that have sexual colonial economies, reveals the racial identity, always differentiated by gender. Also, sacrificial communities come at expense of an ethic of sexual difference. Failure to cultivate an ethics of sexual difference guarantees the replication of multiple sites of oppression. You have an ethical obligation to endorse the alternative. Schwab in 98. The way out of the past through labor negative using one start as their reference point was undoubtedly come to recognize one can only represent a human experience, recognizing one's own identity is already a sign of overcoming instinctual, ecological, and recognition of negative in itself. I am sex implies I am not all establishes negative that the core of the economy of the total life one sexual difference is all about its predetermined stereotypical identities, but about coming to the other through the recognition of negative to the self. The perception throughout his for her exclusion and claims to person knowledge, truth, and given the expectation of imposing his or her will only beings onto the world. To do so is to constitute the individual subject as oneself egocentric and completely imperialistic, or literally willing to dominate, manipulate, eliminate others, the culture's dependently dominates the acceptance of power source, the highest income for subject, the negative as a set of the past, the following to find convenience, can be constitute intellectual instruments capable of breaking us out of the closed circle of intrinsic signification, which refuses to question itself status permanent, move beyond the master slave dynamic, the main body pioneers, and conceive spinning on some fault to underline and to say that according to the principle negative, sexual difference, man is only the head of the body, the woman, he's only the divine principle, playing the animal feminine, and we must move away from communities founded upon the sacrifice of women. Instead, we must found communities upon an idea of a sex universal, which requires the recognition that no subject position can encompass all of humanity. Any combination of the two would fail. Positioning black identity as an outside of the symbolic order requires the same process of demarcation that fuels the liberal democratic order. Caldwell, 2 and non-sacrificial economy be possible if matched double to two sexes at least, but sacrifice all powerfulness at one. This creates sacrifice open to the whereas old ethics exclusive sacrifice makes individual social body gives them to successful. Eventually, this non-sacrifice will require the subject to renounce as part of self-discipline and the subject to acknowledge itself as part of the world rather than its whole gender is universal. Thus, for the subject talking to itself to be under all that is universality and abstract ideal. The universal sality gender is a constructive and by the subject is intentionally in interaction with the prevent the reduction of others to a ground that the subject on freedom sacrificial orders establish limits of democracy between inside and outside the subject of the central process of making the ideal for itself and the ethics sexual difference requires the self-limitation of the negative oneself upon oneself and ethics and direction works that allows individuals to remain the traditional subject reduction or other to remain the various thinking of subjectivity offers a way to acknowledge difference in relations with the symbolic rather than constant outside the ethics negative transform the rules and suppression of difference guarantees extinction and genocide and regret and anyone claims to politics fail of superficial critique exploitation one space and sexual difference only result of service and neutralization of sexual and human race suppress sexual difference more genocide more radical than instruction in history and the alternative. Community without sacrifice. That requires the removal of the logic of sacrifice by refusing to overdetermine identity the way the 1AC does. The alternative theories and alternative community predicated upon a radical notion of pluralism where all difference must be respected. No single form of subjectivity can be elevated to being representative of this community. The focus on the question of visibility and seeing race is ontological rather than relation unconsciously attaches and messes us in whiteness and erases the question of sexual difference, turns the case Shadari crux to K. The system of race has difference among black, brown, red, and white, yellow, and white because no sense of the unconscious reference to whiteness and subtendency binary opposition between people of color and white and areas traces to the condition of foundation of the biological necessity to provide this process depends upon and exploits the structure of sexual difference to signify whiteness and hence to signify the sex is more symbolic than the aspect of focusing on more moments of radical racial anxiety and dissonance in such fact as these pronouns that produce in relation to substance encounter with historicity of whiteness or racism regime and invincibility to secures our investment in radical identity such investment because the conscious identifier whiteness is found on logical racial difference promotes wholeness the whiteness in the place of matches and the eventual difference of type sort of secures our belief in racial difference in the very pressure and desire for whiteness and withdrawal from a system reproduces an economy of the same more 93 the options to resist the circumscribe the passage of pervasive women can withdraw from the passage of culture regret such strategic learns through the correspondence and protect the power that destroys and theirs when undeniable new perspective build a core trained to be in the women's space on survey explained is not the answer such a movement and take the goal of reversing economic order history repeats that because the economy through the same self economy same place where trying to determine identity of the feminine would not emerge in the speech act the 1AC is grounded in mass and economy a critical approach fails to address the starting point social relations subjection to the feminine regret and openness to oneself other than what a moment to be able to speak the defense of the immature feminine source the starting point of man is the things to stats the things that British means several or the discrimination of her being because she fails to live in place as a result of marriage and said dialectic that same power that mature feminine destroys on case. The 1AC's research scholarship represents a continual regurgitation and fixation on representing the communities as damaged. There is nothing unique about its oversaturated scholarship and reproduced colonialism and disempowers communities. TOC and Yang 14 research has been discussed with the documented damage to the same impression and pain of the community. Damage to some research operating the same theory to harm they recorded defense and outside educated the preparation to perceive as scripted theory to the book colonial pocket because the words of misunderstood the past scarce and constant because they require us to franchise communities of by such as the powerlessness the warm reparation to the reality communities relative to the narrative and since they are broken the communities have a fascination with the narrative thing trembling for voyism the non-working academies reproduce stories and impressionism's own voice and recorded voice. And you have engaged in a role confusion around litigators putting out the world entirely academics. The 1AC leaves us with all of the 1AC leaves us with his damage, and in doing so they serve as an advertisement for colonial violence. The time for damage narratives are over preferred desire. TOC 9 the narrative communities holly this is gathering because it inserts the stories that damage we have material links to the poverty because it actually works after the research team leaves the role of this damage where you build a judge to do the lessons that were made been made the balance respect that elders may have the way for research and then communities attempt to become the damage to the narratives and knowing sufficiently performance about getting bashed and providing the subject to the feminine service and advertising for the power. Does have to say in the class of multiple the alternative to damage under research described on research table capture desire instead of damage. Correct damage.
Okay. Let's talk about the alternative. What would it mean to have a community without sacrifice?
Haley.
Okay, so what we think that sacrifice is the sacrifice of difference. So it's not actually just, killing someone as a sacrifice or like killing an animal as a sacrifice, but the definition of mitigating difference. So
mitigating difference. What about the 1AC mitigates difference?
Okay, so I'm going to give an example of a community, and obviously this community is very bad. So in liberalism, we say that there's a citizen, but to define a citizen, and the citizen is crucial to liberalism, but to define that as citizen, we always need a non-citizen, so i.e. Women or people of color. We would say that logic of creating a system of mitigating that difference, and that is a sacrifice of difference to create an identity of
what about the 1AC does that?
Okay, so there's a couple links here. So first, when I was trying to get acrostics of what is the beloved community, well, you were a little bit shifty on it, but when I read your literature, it talked about how a black community is based on, or a beloved community, I'm so sorry I said that. A beloved community is based on, finding some kind of, shared characteristics.
Affirming difference, pluralism, universality of suffering. I'm confused about how that's different from your alternative.
You base your identity and you over-identify with that black suffering. I'll read you a line of your Joy
What
Terry's
about the
evidence.
1AC as all black suffering? I'm confused what you get to reduce as
not.
black suffering.
We agree with a large portion of your 1AC, and that's why this debate's going to get a little messy because the alternative is very close to the affirmative. And so what we want to make sure...
like we give a shit about women, So we're going to take the ballot away from two people talking about how we need women in debate because they don't affirm pluralism by talking about black women and
so you
what
told
that
me
identity
to be a
means.
member of the beloved community, we should have a method debate. I don't understand. This is a competitive space. We should be critiquing ourselves.
I'm
and that we
confused
should be
about how your
critiquing-
method is competitive.
Yeah, so we think that I'll read you a line. Your
Seems
James
like a lot of
evidence says
blame
that.
gaming because you don't think you're a part of our community, is what it seems like.
No, it says that, quote, in a beloved community, one does not negotiate. For example, we think
On
this
terms of its terror from the state.
Yeah.
The Joy James
So-
evidence says it's on the terms of terror.
Yep,
If
so-
you're saying that we should negotiate with the cops, then yeah, we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah, so we think that we can't just replicate that same violence against the white system because that is the same logic
The
of
Joy James
sacrifice
evidence
of
indicates
denying
that we
difference.
cannot take an armed struggle against violence, that a revolutionary war is a people's war, that violence cannot be just enacted or else our deaths go
Yeah.
meaningless.
So
I'm
your
confused.
Joyce evidence, I wrote this down because I think it's a link. It says that armed struggle can never bring a revolution by itself, but this is a people's war. Well, we think that that armed struggle, why are we using that logic of armed? And we question the 1AC on that aspect.
Are you not helping?
Cool.
If you just click recent, it will come up.
Cool.
It's gonna be case and then like routine.
I need those sheets, so I'm just
Actually, I expanded it to top.
just the rig railing is the only thing.
Everything else is on paper.
Awesome. You'll be flipping from there. 2 minutes. Let's forget.
Oh,
Let me see here.
this is a lot. Okay, just gonna put this down. Alright. Are we good? Cool.
The role that balances the team decides the best form of political and scholastic engagement for revolutionary action against anti-black terror. The one degree to beloved community debate for revolutionary politics, scholarship, and embrace with social career. Sonified the fuel for shots of black and female debaters in the debate space. Those who speak out about bonds are hunting excluded because they threaten the foundation of the system itself. Things like this debate pride uniqueness. Round to lose are not without purpose win or lose around. We have a community of people who will support us and fight by our side in the revolution. This beloved community is not one that absolves all anti-black violence, but rather a community in which we can discuss ways anti-blackness manifests itself in our everyday lives and create a greater something to understand that balance. The paradox of the revolution is that political resources could kill you, but the beloved community can save you not from physical death, but from meaningless death. Their first argument is that scholarship presents communities as damage. This card is about us creating narratives of pain and how it reproduces as bad stories and how it reproduces negative stories in the academy. First of all, the beloved community resolves all of these questions because it presents us a community we can discuss the way that things may be co-opted within the academy, but we have a space where we do not necessarily work within the traditional academies. So we can create academic knowledge outside of civil society academics. Second of all, we are not a narrative of pain. Nothing about the 1AC is Q and I talking about how we are oppressed, or even just talking about how Assad in specific is oppressed. Anti-blackness is not an identity politic; it is a structure on which America is founded. See, like things like just like capitalism. Their next argument is that we're an advertisement for colonial violence, that we shouldn't read narratives. The 1AC is not a narrative, nor are we an advertisement for colonial violence. We are a structural analysis of anti-blackness. Go to the critique at the top, make a huge permutation, do both, and extend our James evidence here. Our James evidence indicates that we have to analyze the ways that things like gender, race, capitalism, sexism, and homophobia all interact with one another. That is the way we form communities. We don't form communities by us saying anti-blackness and then being like, yeah, but gender, we should talk about women instead. We think this is a bad method of politics. Instead, we should all come together and form a beloved community. When we have 5 women talking within a debate round, it shouldn't be about whether or not we prefer gender or blackness. Our argument is that we should be able to we should be able to have discussions about how to change things like the debate community instead of discussing which oppression comes first. I want to get something straight here. American society may be affected by gendered violence, but it is not what structures America. Their decision to identify the antagonism by what it is not only provides another way to smooth over the violence of anti-blackness. White women who speak out about gendered violence are not forced to escape to prison, added to terrorist lists, or have bounties on their head. I'm not open to gratuitous violence when people look at me because my skin color is white. In the 1900s, white women were allowed to get away with blaming black men hopping trains with them by saying they were raped to be absolved of all blame because the black men were already marked by their skin color and seen as violent sexual beings. Put simply, you need to ask yourself the question of what the alternative does for Trayvon or Jordan Davis. It does not crowd out white women, though examples of women like Marilyn Buck indicate that we can have solidarity, but it depends on us joining them. And the violence she faces is emblematic that we are not safe from anti-blackness just because we're white women. As soon as we pull away from the white men, we're still threatened by forms of anti-blackness. Second of all, politics needs to start with an understanding of the black matrix. Matrix, from the Latin term breeding female animal, mater or mother, signifies origin. To encounter black female suffering without mimetic performances, intimacy, and vulnerability to such suffering. The black matrix outlines the limits of democracy that created the beauty of resistance to the reproductive slave formation. The black matrix or black woman is located in a structural position of rape. This conception does not formulate rape as an incident which happens or one which more or less vulnerable to, but rather is the very condition of being for the black woman and by extension both slaves in the world in which those slaves exist. Any discussion of political violence that does not attune itself to racial rape reifies and re-articulates anti-blackness through sex. Understanding the positionality of the black woman is crucial to understanding all of their positionalities in the world. The maroon flight within black matrices, such as the beloved community, makes sense of the vulnerabilities in our lives. We analyze these matrices in the context of maroonage, forced outside the civil society in order to attempt to develop a grammar, a way to describe the grammar that underlies the U.S.'s foundational antagonism, the accumulation and death of the black woman. That's James 13. Flesh from technique, human assumption, one is creating the room philosophers, how to have the boundary democracy, capitalism, recognize two coordinate phenomena, democracy is a boundary redefining freedom through captivity, and room philosophy, the birds reimagining freedom through flight, reproductivity, points to black matrix, cypher, symbolic material, subjugation of birth, and racial capital, overshadows racial rape, seeming racial gender differences, masculinized by suffering, upholding of black female trauma, and to the black male flame, death, romance, prisoners, John, Briss, North, and bonds, and the public racial rape is complicated, mercurial, though all blood trails are traceable back to the black matrix, focused on the nature of subjugating extension region to interior space, called stating sacrificial black women's matrix, and no public record, the black matrix offers an ability state and make violence where terrorists meet Western democracy, painting back to the black matrix, it is also through middle closing material economy, siblings are the primary targets of terror against black female matrices and children. The DNA of police, military, master, mistress, races, working immigrants, black capitals, maroons, all can be found in the bodies of black matrix, full-size black mother, transform tragedies into a breach of democracy. Permutation to the after forms of this round is the beloved community. I did that work at the top of the 1AC Center. Spiller's evidence. Their criticism assumes a subject who has a liberated body. However, the black female slave exists in a world as a relation of flesh. While this flesh may be overcoated by other interlocking social conflicts such as gender, only by focusing our analysis on crimes against the flesh can we hope to solve the critique. It is the body of the captive female slave that gathers and concentrates all other social realities. It's under James evidence. It says that women's liberation is premised off of a liberated country and culture. Their ability to tell us that we don't focus on the right form of women is bullshit. There's a difference between black women and white women. Their colorblind is independently bad. They should things like the civil rights movement, where they had marches at the Capitol, but they told the black women that they had to march at the back because they were afraid of backlash. They denied something important to. They denied something important to Assata, saying she should only saying that her identity as a woman should come before her as identity black. We need to have discussions about things like what Assata does when she has a baby in prison and what she does with that baby. What she does she have the right to go to Cuba and raise her child instead of just staying here and being a revolutionary all the time? She should be able to fight different forms of terror depending on what she believes, and this is why we need the beloved community. This is why we need the beloved community within debate. I'll answer their specific arguments here. First of all, they say community sacrifice is different. First of all, this evidence is about traditional Western communities, which one is definitely not. Second is the main argument in this debate around blackness is not intelligible to the political. Blackness can speak, but it is never heard. Even in political spaces, people can't do things for black people because they are formed in opposition to civil society, which means that the one is not an intelligible form of politics that they are criticizing. Third is extend our Spiller's evidence here. Black people don't have subjectivity, which is a direct answer to this link, argument. Their next link argument is that ontology limits questions of racial violence. That first of all, the James evidence I just read is a direct answer to this because the black female is the best starting point for evaluating questions of gender, sex, gender, sex, and racial schemas. Second of all, this course is about the erasure of gender, which the 1AC definitely is not. Our James evidence indicates we have to have discussions about how these things interact. Third of all, this link is probably resolved by the permutation. They say race reduces women to an add-on. Argument is that it's a structure, or that anti-blackness is a structure, not an identity politics. We don't say it matters more to be black or it matters more to be a woman, but rather that these things all intersect with each other, and we need to talk about the way that they intersect, not which one comes first. It's not an oppression Olympics. We don't talk about which oppression matters more. We say it's oppression and we should fight it. They say we should have an ethic of sexual difference. Our James evidence indicates that ethic of sexual difference should begin by analyzing the black matrix. Their Cadwell evidence is about Foucault, who whitewashes and ignores the plantation. He is writing across the world from the plantation during the 18th century, which means the 1AC probably is a good way to break this down. It's also not a link to the 1AC, which means you don't evaluate it. They say suppression of difference is bad. We'll agree with that thing. When things are different, we should work together within the beloved community. Their alternative indicates that we can't overdetermine identity. Our argument is that identity is overdetermined from the outside by civil society, aka things like police profiling, and not being able to walk down the street with a skirt without being profiled based on your gender or sex. They say that race and ontology invests in whiteness, but it's a reality. It's not whiteness. Things like police profiling prove that race and ontology also are speaking our Spiller's evidence here. They say this leads to an economy of the same. The 1AC is not a retreat into an economy of the same. We agree there is things like difference. They say our speech act is masculine. There's no reason our speech act is any different than the alternative. Long story short, don't play oppression Olympics. We're here. We're 5 women talking in a debate round. We should talk about the way things intersect, not about what comes first.
First question is, what is the role of the ballot?
The role of the ballot is which team best performatively and methodologically combats anti-black violence.
So if you're talking about anti-black violence, what are you doing to prevent an oppression Olympics from happening? It seems
All right,
like your role of the ballot.
let me make this really clear. Anti-blackness is not an identity politic. I am affected by anti-blackness just as much as Q is affected by anti-blackness. It's a structure. I'm not saying black people matter more than women. I'm saying that these oppressions are all caught up in a chain that's caused by
So
anti-blackness.
that is why I would answer,
Okay.
it's not an oppression Olympics,
That's
because
fine.
we're not saying gender doesn't matter, but instead a black woman
That's fine.
faces.
What do you do to independently work outside the system when it seems like you respond to
Well, argument is the beloved community, first of all, provides us a way to combat civil society, kind of push back against anti-black practices, but it also gives us a space where we can kind of operate outside of civil society.
Like a new community, or are you just
Argument is
trying
that
to
these
change
communities
something
are here in the status quo. We create them in debate. Q and I are an example of a beloved community. Us and our coach Preston have been working all year on this stuff. We also think that we have communities of people like Bronx Law and SPC, who unfortunately isn't here, but we have communities. We care about them. They're supporting us at the TOC. We create communities with people where we can combat violence.
If your question is, do we reform communities that exist, our answer is no. Our argument is that there is a uniqueness question. We think we are a community and we are creating new communities, which is what Emma's getting to.
Okay, that's fine. What were the perms? It's just perm do both.
Permutation do both, and permutation do the AF.
Okay. What does the world of the app ballot look like? Never mind, you kind of just answered that. You said the subject of the neg is assumed to be liberal. What about the neg assumed any subject to be liberal? What does that even mean?
Our argument is that your focus on gender/sex obscures anti-blackness. Your ability to say that we should evaluate specific identities before we evaluate anti-blackness is uniquely bad because it ignores the overall structure that allows for these identities to exist in the first place. Argument is that anti-blackness is the foundation of civil society, which means that for things like struggles against sexism to exist, civil society has to first exist.
Sure. What do you do to prevent economy of the same? You said by creating or having these communities.
To be fair, I don't know exactly what the economy of the same means, but I think the 1AC embraces forms of difference and says we should talk about intersectionality.
Within your communities, what do you do to resolve the issue of difference?
We have discussions about the issues of difference and how we can combat both things at the same time. Like, for instance, the James evidence I read in the 2AC indicates that starting from the position of evaluating what it means to be a black woman is a good way to evaluate how things intersect, how oppressions intersect, and how that creates structures that, I guess, function in our lives.
Okay. Just to be clear, do you completely withdraw from the current system?
No, our argument is that the beloved community obviously can't just jettison the current system and pretend it doesn't exist, but it allows us to find ways to fight against violence within the current system, fight against police violence, fight against violence that happens to us in debate rounds. It allows us a community to, I guess, make connections so that we can resolve that stuff.
Alright, I'll stop and move on.
Is it 8 minutes?
Okay, then you have.
Cool. Then
I haven't judged the first 6.
yeah.
Glad
You made an argument about antagonism is not what it is not. that is what I have in my quote. Do you remember just kind of clarifying something about that?
I mean, like, I know I made the argument that, like, it's not, the antagonism isn't based on, like, sexual difference.
Oh, okay. It's just, okay.
Okay, you drop a paper on the floor.
I'll get it.
No, that is good. Yep. I'm just going to read it. I think you can read that. So. have hearts. Just the K. I lied. Case. K then K. K then case. K then case. Yeah. Skate. Cross-sex was so shifty on what they defend as a beloved community, so you should be held to what their evidence indicates. I'll read you some lines of what a beloved community actually is. Their joy, James evidence indicates that, quote, an armed struggle can never bring a revolution by themselves because we must have a war and have a people's war. This armed struggle is a link. Second, they say that the evidence says that, quote, we need to have a sense of community by fearless determination. This is what recreates the same logic of the oppressors because we never should use the tools of the oppressors. Third is that in quote, in a beloved community, one can never negotiate, we have to find meaning in black suffering. This is the biggest coming out of the Joy James evidence because we should never have agency based on black suffering, but rather have agency based on something else, on the individual. Lastly, in 2EC Crossing, she says that, quote, we should fight against violence. We should not create big community-based tools on the oppressor because that kills agency, homogenizes black bodies, and reaffirms structures of civil society because that is what civil society does in these days. Quote, the 2EC had no defense of why the beloved community and their representations is good. The alternative is a community without sacrifice. That requires the removing of logic of sacrifice by removing the overdetermined identity in the first place. We should not have communities because we are all already in a community, and even if civil society is already messed up in the first place, we shouldn't reaffirm those logics of civil society by saying what members can be in that beloved community in the first place. They continue the logic of sacrifice by using the tools of the oppressor to break down the system, but rather we should have a new community based on rejecting that logic of sacrifice and rather embracing a world of all difference and reaffirming every single difference in itself. Just because they read some chorus about women and because they read chorus about class, yes, we agree, we should have an oppression Olympics. We agree to that, but when we reject the notion of beloved community, we agree with 6 minutes of the 1EC, but if we want to have a method debate, we need to be able to debate their method, which was the beloved community out of the 1EC, which was what the criticism reject. The act perpetuates an economy of sacrifice through its construction of a community imposed on the structure of anti-black terror. Caldwell evidence indicates that a structure of modern society is supported by a process of sacrifice, a term that has been elevated to the status universal. A second is sacrifice from the community to set up boundaries that provide a consistency for the community. What is elevated, what is sacrifice is no important to all. Community founded on sacrifice of men is no different than community sacrifice founded on the sacrifice of women. A community founded on the sacrifice of anti-black bodies is no different than a sacrifice of a community based on the sacrifice of white bodies. The notion of sacrifice must be removed as a mechanism for how communities are founded. The affirmative uses the structure in two ways versus the clinic evidence. The focus on black identity as being a result of racial violence and ontological death forecloses the possibility of black identity situated in the institution of slavery and the plantation. We shouldn't associate the black body with slavery and slavery and black oppression because that means that their identity is always coded with that logic. Yes, that is the status quo, but if the affirmative reaffirms that we should create new modes of knowledge and we should rethink that, means you should vote negative to create a new method away from the beloved community. If we win a Lincoln and impact, you should vote negative because it's a question of we need to be able to debate this app, and if we have a reason why the app is a bad idea, then you shouldn't reaffirm the same logic. This also means, in other words, they don't meet their role of the ballot because they don't allow for black identity to be theorized outside of the structural outsider of modern society because they continue to claim and base their community based on what civil society has labeled it. We should reject those notions. Second is the burdener basis of race and gender. Race is treated with ontological primacy throughout the 1EC by being the center upon modern society is founded. It's not the 1EC, but race is the primary factor of the beloved community, which is different. We must complicate these depictions of violence inside of the 1EC by bringing in discussions about how masculinity is translated into politics and violence of the transatlantic slave trade. This trade-off uses the AF papers over the specificity of the women's bodies as they're articulated through the discourses of race in order to be a black or white subject. Difference between genders must be suppressed in order for there to be constituents for those black and white subjects. Now, lastly, I'll do the line by line here. The permutation is going to be in the two of the one and or. They need the XACD James evidence. Yes, we should analyze interactions, but that does not justify their notions of a beloved community. Next, they say we should come together. Yeah, we should come together, but not in the terms of what your beloved community is. When Crossix, she says that we should have friendship and that we should hire people, we should have people volunteer for coaches. Yeah, that is a great thing, but we should have notions of community based on what your evidence from the 1EC indicates. Next, they say antagonism is that black identities are based on what it is not. Yes, this is responsive. However, this is not responsive because that you reaffirm those same logics by saying that the black identity is what civil society labels it at. They say alternative for and what does alternative do for Trayvon? This is the alternative is so close to the act that we endure so much of it. It's a question that we should just reject the sacrifice logic of the 1EC. The 1EC is also a link because why is the app using a black body that has always used as a person of suffering because he is always known when we think of Trayvon. Civil society has coded him as suffering, but also they code him as what do they do because he has suffered and because his body has been so fractured by whiteness that we should reject it. However, our anti-blackness put us the question, why did they use that example? Why can't we just talk about a black body as a black body? Then next they say solidarity. Yep, we should have solidarity. Yes. Next they say the James piece of evidence. This James piece of evidence of a matrix. This is not a rigorous critique. We're not going for the rigorous impacts. There's no link to this. This K is a K of how they view community because communities is the word community and the based on why we have the word community in the first place is based on liberalism because liberalism says that this is a citizen and everything outside of it is a non-citizen, but we always base what the definition of a citizen is by the definition of a non-citizen. We should reject this logic. They reappropriate this by saying that this is a member of the beloved community and what a member who is not the black community is someone who is not friends with us or who didn't come to hire us come to this tournament for hire. They also everything is already coded in masculinity. The evidence from the 1EC indicates that everything is written in a masculine language and a masculine economy of the same. Well, we need to recognize that difference, or else we recreate the same violence. Next, they say it's just a link of omission and that we are just colorblind. No, we do not say that you need to focus on women. No more, because I know you did in the 1EC, but it's a question of your beloved community doesn't. In the CH code, yes, you recreate the Western society by saying this is a community and this is what it should look like. And your evidence that is not responsive. Next, they say blacks are never heard in the political system. Yeah, blacks are not heard in the political system. That is messed up, but that doesn't mean we should have an identity and place black bodies by saying that they're as a black body, they are not ever going to be in the political system, or that or their identity is non-political and is status quo. By saying that the black body is antagonistic, that means that they link to this argument because they say the black body will always be antagonist to the civil society, which means we should never put those terms onto a body. They say blackness does not have a subject. Cool, that is not our argument. They say black women are a certain point. Cool, that's cool too, not the beloved community. They say Foucault washes, that is not the argument. Our argument is about critique of a community. They say the identity over determination is now that is also not responsive. The role of the ballot on the case flow. They say role of the ballot is about whoever best creates the best political engagement. The alternative is so close to the act, but it's a reformulation of what that community means that we should reject those notions of sacrifice, meaning if their method is flawed, you should vote negative. They say that we should discuss violence, and the app does that by increasing education. We are not going for the tuck and yang arguments, but the question of their methodology is good.
Alright, what's an economy of sacrifice?
Okay. An economy of sacrifice is a community or a system that identifies identity based on the non-identity.
What does that mean?
Okay, example I used in Crossix. I said in liberalism, they say that liberalism is defined by the citizen, but what the citizen is always defined by what the non-citizen is. So
okay,
a non-citizen is someone who doesn't vote or who
when we say that the beloved community is a community of revolutionaries committed to fighting anti-black terror,
yes.
How does that say the outside equals what the inside is?
Okay, so let me just read your quotes from the Joe James evidence that I quoted. It says that, quote, "We need to build a sense of community based on fierce domination. We need to have an armed struggle and have a people's war. A beloved community one can never negotiate and find meaning in. And we must find meaning in black suffering."
Okay, why shouldn't we
Finding
find
in
meaning
black
in suffering?
We should not be able to. We should not find meaning in black suffering.
Okay, when the 1AC says there are commonalities between anti-blackness and the way that it affects white people's lives, why should we not find commonalities between those things?
Because we shouldn't associate the black body in terms of anti-blackness. Okay, right?
Okay,
the word anti-blackness,
so how do we talk about the
definition says we always
how
have
do we
gray
talk about the
bodies
way
in
that
comparison.
anti-blackness affects black people then?
Huh?
How do we talk about the way that anti-blackness affects black people then?
We should think about black bodies as black bodies of what their individual identity is.
What is an individual identity, and do
think
the
about
cops
them
think about it when they pull you
antagonistic
over?
ways. Huh?
What is an individual identity, and do the cops think about it when they pull you over?
Okay, this is a method about what we should embrace as a beloved community.
Yes, I'm asking what's an individual identity because I feel like cops probably don't pay attention to that.
Yes, it's not about. This is about your strategy, and if your strategy is flawed.
What's an individual identity?
An individual identity? What does that mean?
You just said individual identity.
Okay, is whatever that individual thinks their identity is.
Okay, so
But
how does
they
that change the
shouldn't
fact that
define
cops
themselves.
pull over black people, that Asada was marked by her skin color
Yeah.
from the second
White
she got out of the
supremacy
car
is-
on the turnpike shooting?
White supremacy is really messed up. Yes, I agree with that.
Okay, so how does people embracing their individual identities resolve that?
It's that we shouldn't embrace identities. How does embracing identities based on what civil society has put on you solve that?
When did we say that black people's identity stopped at ontology?
You said black bodies are antagonistic to civil society.
Sure, why does that mean they don't
put-
have an identity outside of civil society?
You have put connotations to the black body.
Alright,
onto it.
connotations, alright,
Okay,
I feel
and
you.
identities.
What does embracing his identity do for Trayvon?
Embracing his identity? What do you mean?
You've been telling me that people have to have individual identities.
Yes, we shouldn't
And
be
that
just
the
using
affirmative is bad
Trayvon's
because it
body
doesn't allow
as
that.
as an instance of suffering, right?
Okay, I'll take prep time for this, actually. Then how do we talk about instances of suffering? How do we talk about Asada, Trayvon, Renisha,
Yes,
etc.?
that is fine, but we shouldn't just code Trayvon as a black body antagonistic to civil society.
When did
should
we say
talk
that
about
was
him.
all Trayvon is?
You said, what does the alternative do to resolve oppression based on that
Okay, so-
Trayvon faced?
Alright, sounds like a link of omission.
Emma. Let's go over our speech. Or probably need to.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Let's do the perms.
Just one second. Do you have my pen, please?
This one?
No. Okay, cool.
Do you both have it?
Hold on.
Right. You good? They say perm to that, however, this continues its strategy of a beloved community and suffer this. Now group the perms first double by neither they silly because it endorses the part we criticize, or it suffers, which is the voting issue because it denies the stable link ground and moves our strategy voting issue for fairness, education, second to cross apply. Any risk of link means there's not a better the permutation cross apply the links from the 2 and C and the Cedar quotes evidence to link is an independent fitting in itself in a prior question to the ask method of ask method of the affirmative has structured oppression in the context of anti-blackness, but we are winning to root cause and ways that our race and whiteness is a byproduct of disavowal of sexual difference because we are continually avoiding embodiment of individual bodies. There's no such thing as being white as a goal to be achieved because it's an ideology that demonstrates society we desire. Whiteness is a way of denying one's body and tapping into the structure of whiteness, the Cartesian subject of recognition or rejection of the connection between mind and bodies, but cause whiteness to infiltrate society in the first place. And white people destroy others to elevate them closer to whiteness. The alternative brings back corporal reality to the picture. Everything is determined by the body, just an imbalance. Serotonin causes depression, and our physical embodiment affects how we interact with the world. When I see things that we can determine someone's race based on the phenotype, this vessel naturalizes the process of race is a fixed thing, but rather our race is dynamic. man cannot stack. The drive for humans is an attempt to create wholeness. We are born into a world that language is imperfect and incomplete. This is proven by the call for the value symbolic acts that presuppose neutrality and representation, which is structurally impossible for the feminine subjectivity. We can represent blackness viscerally and sexually, but we can't make ontological statements about femininity. And third link is the moral link by attempting to create these beloved communities. They do not start from a point of difference, because the communities are swept into statements denying difference. Attempting to unite might be good, but after you affirm difference, they do not do this. Additionally, simply discussing difference does nothing. Statistical language is coded in the white masculine form, means discussions without first recognizing difference as the method only reifies masculine and white privilege, and they what?
Just read this line.
They recreate the inside outside binary because to create a community that is a stable locus of identity and other in opposition. We should complicate this community. Also, they do not get a perm. It's not beneficial. Presumption goes negative in the world of perm. All links are reasons voting negative superiority. They can't provide a net benefit to the perm. It's not a reason vote for them. Even if we lose the perm, it gets them nowhere. It means you kick the all because the perm is a test of competition. They still have to be the rest of the K. The second this is a method, debate, or interpretations that 1AC, 1C are both rhetorical artifacts that contain strategies for engaging the world. You should choose between these. The perm do both meaningless phrase. No one choice. The explanation for how they combine a performance with their plain text method perms are incoherent. It's two different strategies in combination yields a third strategy, which is either intrinsic or severance, but the orientation because lets them mutate out of our offense. And then if they win, the third is that if they win the perm, you should vote negative because it proves that the 1AC method was flawed. It's a question of sequencing. If the app was a good idea, we should prioritize the alt first and counter perm. When we solve the app better, we agree that the app is good too. This is a question of starting points to break down that oppression and what?
Skip it.
Okay. The perms fail to fuse concerns the outset of ensures the feminine demands of politics are always subordinate to the racially focused frameworks of the 1AC Cedar 2. What would a femininity of feminism say? To see consists of feminism retains an antagonist relationship with the nation trope and the numerous nations of movements. The feminist struggles usually subordinate to the national circle, the opposite with the relation between feminism and nationalism and privilege race. Nation is more fundamental category for all articles discuss women in relation to the individual and ethnic groups. Women are always already members of the racial collective, which is the following of effect nationalist discourse subordinates any feminist agency to its own demands. Such demands can be heard and sparely and are articulable to nationalist national demands, and a total rethinking is key. Regret and any theory revolution in thought and ethics needed to work with sexual differences to take place. We need to reinterpret everything concerning the relations between the subject and discourse, the world, microcosmic, everything getting in the way. The subject has been written in the masculine form. Human is claimed to be universal, neutral, and appropriation. Just add the alt recognizes the place of enunciation for the feminine that cannot be reconciled by the perm. They become pimps for the alt referred. In 91, the male philosophers I think the feminine. They diagnosed the crisis of philosophy in a century of the subject. The problems of marginalization. Women have never had this relation to philosophy. The subject of the philosophy is male since they've never been the subject of philosophy. They are not trying to establish the traditional male philosophers. Not called person that had my philosophers and pimps. A postmodern the new kind of gender towards male theories to take action from the world of femininity.
Read that.
The 1AC gets instrumentalized narratives become information to be processed to control and manage the world. Jurek 07, the economy describes the rules of operating an organization, maintain a household, and a house in question here is being linked to the format of reality of information. This person can calculate everything is constant and standing reserve information. It becomes really comparable to data. This culture of reality information means cultural, political, social relations, undergoing and similar process of information. The relations are described in terms of production, consumption, and having an informational structure to be discernible, to become an object of discussion. Our ways of open this audience is incomprehensible into marketing statements. The acceptable very short to the infinite repetition of repassing the benefit of dissemination. The merit of works reflected on wars. We have the economy information which relations become constituted and information to be real today is convertible information and possible information to manifest. This would make an reality something knowable but controllable. Also reject the ideological bait in which the perm is precisely the episodic hijack that makes it possible to create space for the feminine in politics. To sure. Two, that women's politics has further language is extremely male fear the adopted the wind or movements and they attack the power structure that are adopted the subject to a fast order. This gesture constitutes stability considered low expectation more than women also be contaminated by the period operation method politics and more as they do as women.
this community that's always based on what finding black meaning in opposition to the system. So we should kind of reformulate that and not create a community based on opposition, but rather just like a community.
What is that community based around then?
Not oppositional categories.
Like, I guess, like, who does that mean, like, anyone gets to be in the community?
No, but we just shouldn't be like people who can't fight or can't be fierce shouldn't be in our communities.
Okay.
Please don't read that right now. I just can't see that right now. Don't have that in front of me.
I had
That's fine. Let me give myself 2 seconds. It'll be the case and then critique. The role of academia best fights back form political scholastic age revolutionary action is anti-black terror. Sought as a good model for black and female debaters. We speak out in the debate space. We are hunting to go from the fear of the anti-debate communities. We know this creates a community revolution is capable of resisting anti-black violence. This community is not one that gets rid of all anti-black violence, but creates a space and framework to understand that violence in the community with the ability to give meaning to the violence that exists within an anti-black world. Extend James' evidence there. Decide the alternative represents a racial rape because only the affirmative rape theorizes racial rape. Any politics that lacks a discussion rape is one that is doomed to reduce what is essential about the situation. The rise of the black matrix is turns decay because before the black matrix, the matrix is the position from which systems of race and sex are reproduced and maintained, which is a disadvantage.
Cross-apply their argument for the what and are that they can't co-opt performances, which means they don't get to like garner any of our racial rape offense.
Their argument from the women are about how you can't commodify performance means they don't get to garner any of our racial rape offense. They've conceded that that identities of sexual difference are only predicated off of the black matrix of the permutation. Thus has a net benefit because R1AC is a discussion of the way that black women represent themselves in not only that, but an antagonistic structural analysis of the black matrix. The permutation due to the FR James evidence indicates that the black female is what makes overall identity possible, meaning our deconstruction of relations with power, solves a K permutation to both extend James evidence again. The James evidence implicates any politics that does not include racial classics. Full opposition is a delusion of black politics. If black women experience all of those oppressions simultaneously, focus on any individual oppression is to allow the oppression to occur in the black right center. Spiller's evidence of criticism assumes the subject's possession of a liberated body. However, the black female exists in a role of relation of flesh. While this flesh may be overcoded and interlocking social conflicts, only by focusing our analysis on crimes against the flesh can we hope to solve the critique. Our Spiller's evidence says that, as Spiller says, the body of the captive female slave has been gathers and concentrates all social realities. Even the black women have been liberated from slavery. They're still marked by its afterlife of captivity, the mutilation and rape. Our 2EC James evidence indicates the lack of attention to specificity of racial rape, dooms politics, replicating anti-black masculine violence. In order for both Emma and I to understand positionality within the world, we must begin to understand and navigate the black matrix. Our James evidence from the 1AC indicates that the formation of beloved community is essential to finding out the understanding amongst gratuitous violence. We need to think about what it means for two women to take the ballot away from women of color and another woman because they set a standard for what a community looks like, and we're not that. Any part of the 1AC that disagrees with that sort of logic, is offense for us. It is fucked up to say that black women don't get the ballot in this debate round because we have set a standard for what your community is, and your community does not meet our standards. They have mislabeled what our community looks like. First argument she extends is that it's an armed structure. The piece of the George James evidence that she's standing about the armed struggle says that you can't take the armed struggle as a force against civil society because that will always get co-opted, but instead a people's war needs to be a manifestation where we understand the universality and the particularities that exist within the world. And when I see cross I explain that the beloved community is a community that has revolutionaries committed to resisting the structure of anti-black violence. It manifests itself through forms of sexism, homophobia, patriarchy, and female child suffering. This is a misinterpretation of the one I see. They say extended part where we say we shouldn't negotiate. Our argument is that we shouldn't negotiate with the cops, not that we shouldn't negotiate in questions of beloved community and having discussions in which we think the revolution solved. I think that's the only link she had to the beloved community. The next argument is Czar's evidence is about co-option. Our argument is not about that one civil society is already an outside places ontological markers on its body's huge new benefit to the permutation is no answer to the question, what do you do if you're being profiled by the cops, or where does your individual identity get you? Blackness is overturned by the outside. That's Spiller's evidence. Our argument is not that we should let blackness control us, but instead that there is a system outside and we should train ourselves to understand what happens in that system. It's screwed up for them to say, Q, it's your job to just stop imagining that you're black, and when you do that, your problems are solved. My argument is that after the debate space, I still have to leave the room and am implicated by the fact that not only am I black, but I'm a black female at the bottom of the matrix, and that replicates violence that can't be accounted for within the alternative means that there's only a risk that the assholes better. If their argument on the permutation is that they're so close that there's only a chance there's a risk, means that there's only a risk that the permutation solves the residual links, means that you don't get them, that we should talk about instances of anti-black violence. We are not saying any more of civil society than that. We're saying that there is a space outside of civil society where we can create discussions to have meaning in anti-black violence, structural anti-black violence.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, case. The question you should ask yourself is, what is the beloved community? Who is in it? What are their methods? What are their tactics? Are there coalitions? Is there violence? The answer to all these questions is that the affirmative has created a unified characteristic of what their community is. Their James Joyce evidence indicates that we need to have an armed struggle. We need to fight against the system, that we need to not negotiate it. We need to find meaning and identity in Black suffering. That is the characteristics that they put on the Black beloved community. This means that they have put these identities onto the Black beloved community, which means that they have put identities based on civil society. These are the same tactics as civil society. What they have used, these links have not conceded. Do not allow them to be shifty in the 2AR. You should hold them to what their evidence says. Yes, we agree with a lot of portions of their 1AC, but we disagree with their notions of beloved sensitivity. This, Judge, you cannot reduce this debate to what method is good for them, because we have presented a method about communities. They have to defend the ramifications of what their beloved community means, and if we actually use it in outside locations. Two links mean that their method is a bad method versus they rectify an inside-out binary because they create a community with a stable
in the below community, like within civil society, because at the end of the day, I still believe black. They don't ever take that consideration. You can't wish black is election. Right. Genocide.
It'll be casing, okay?
The role of the bell is the team who supplies best one with scholarship game for revolutionary action standing black here. The ones who read the beloved community debate, the revolutionary public scholarship and embrace the social career, just like a son of black people majors are forced to the basis. We speak out the community warrants against hunting and excluding us because we throw in the foundation of the system itself. This creates beloved communities between revolutionaries and debate. Q and I are in resistant debate are good examples of what beloved communities look like. Win or lose around the arguments we make of a purpose, and they create and shape a community of people who will support us and fight for our side in the revolution. My argument is not that the beloved community resolves all violence in civil society, but the community loves to analyze and discuss the ways anti-blackness manifests itself in our everyday lives and create a still can understand that violence. Full of course, this could kill us, but the beloved community could save us not from physical death, but from meaningless death and spirit. No counter roll of the ballot means you default to what best resists anti-blackness. We're going to win. That's the affirmative. Go to the critique. Extend the permutation to vote. We get the permutation as long as you win. Their method is encompassed within the 1AC, aka you can vote AF even without the permutation because the 1AC solves the negative strategy. We have two specific dissonance to the alternative or points of difference, which mean you can vote affirmative. First of the racial rape evidence. Extend our James evidence. They're saying they get to garner this as offense because they are the affirmative. But thing is, they're conceding that we conceded a piece of evidence they read in the 1 and R that says they don't get to commodify our performance or say that the things we said in our performance belong to them, which means that they don't get access to any of our racial rape arguments. And that's an independent dissent to the alternative. The black matrix should be the starting point to discussion about the way ontology affects our everyday lives. The alternative reproduces racial rape because only the affirmative theorizes racial rape. Any politics that lacks discussion of racial rape is doomed to reproduce what's essential about the situation. The rape of the black matrix argument is that we have the best position. Our argument is that the black female gives us all a position to identify. It sets an ontological precedent for what it means to be a white female or a white male or a black man. That's the best way to evaluate things in debate around anyone that doesn't talk about the black matrix means you inevitably reproduce anti-black violence because we pushed it to a discussion in the background. They also don't get to garner any of the 1AC. They also don't get to garner any of the 1AC offense. And considering one of the key internal links to the beloved community is having a methodology debate about a specific form of resisting anti-black violence. Them saying we should have a community is not a methodology, which means you default off on questions roll the ballot. The second dissent to the alternative is that black ontology is overdetermined from the outside. They're conceding a spiller piece of evidence that is hella good on this question. Their criticism assumes Cedar to his position of a liberated body. However, the black female slave exists in the world as a relation of flesh. Well, this flesh may be overcoated by other interlocking social conflicts. Only by focusing on our analysis on crimes against the flesh can we hope to solve the critique. As Spiller says, it's the body of the captive female slave that gathered and concentrates all their social realities. Even though black women have been liberated from slavery, they are still marked its afterlife of capacity, mutilation, and rape. Our 2AC James evidence indicates lack of attention to the specificity of racial rape due to politics by replicating by replicating anti-black and masculine violence. In order for you and I to understand our positionality within the world, we have to first begin by understanding how to navigate the black matrix. They're conceding that their alternative is nothing for racial profiling of the prison industrial complex, because individual identity doesn't confront what to do if you're being racially profiled by the cops. It doesn't confront the fact that Asada could not just embrace her individual identity to change what happened on the turnpike. Trayvon couldn't embrace his individual identity to change what happened to him on the part of George Zimmerman. They say that they say that they don't have agency. Our argument is not that black people don't have agency, but that's commodified by civil society, which is a net benefit to the 1AC. They're also conceding specific analysis that we're doing on who is part of the beloved community. The start of our 2NC is what is a beloved community. Let me tell you what a beloved community is. It's a community of revolutionaries committed to resisting anti-black violence. The James Evans specifically says that there are intricacies to the community. Sure, it says that we should confront black violence, but that's her point. Is we can all find a commonality in the violence that happens to black people, because there's violence that happens to all of us on the part of a structure called anti-blackness. It is a structural politics. It's not an identity politics, which means that none of their arguments on this question make sense. We don't set guidelines for community besides that they have to resist anti-blackness, which is good because it keeps the cause that our beloved community does not only give meaning to black suffering, but instead in an anti-black world it questions how we give meaning or create a universal language to describe everyone's suffering. They don't explain what their community is. They're just saying our shit is bad, which is probably not a good reason to vote for them. Them saying our community is bad, they don't explain to us how their community is any different, what their community looks like, what their community does. The default ask on these questions. Permutation due to the 1AC resolves all of these things, and counterperm is also an example of whiteness par excellence. They say inside out binary, yeah, cops are out, we need some rules. They also we don't have like a specific definition of what it means to be a revolutionary. We say there are different points of revolutionizing. They say we homogenize black bodies. We say there's a reality where black bodies make up a lot of the prison industrial complex. They make up a lot of people who are racially profiled. We need a world to exist. The beloved community allows us to exist outside of civil society, as well as working within the problems that happen in civil society. They say withdrawal length, that we need sameness. We don't withdraw from civil society. Our James Evans talks about maroonage versus captivity. Call for James before you vote on this. The alternative, we solve all the alternatives external impacts because the app encompasses them.
That was a great round.
Can you email me all the cards you think you expended in the 2NR? Can you give me all the cards you think you expended in the 2NR?
Sure. Well,
Do you know what you want? Or, no? Which one? Flint was not bothering that. Hey, should that start working?
Yeah, I had it on a charger like all night. I think the battery is just super dead.
Yeah, 'cause I had used it like for years,
It looks like there's a video plays on it.
except for that.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah. Let's see.
I was just flipping through and I see his afro and he's wearing a cheeky and laser skin.
I thought this was a very good debate. Congratulations to all 4 debaters. I'm sad I had to pick a loser. I think all of y'all 4 are great and should definitely debate in college because you are very talented. I had ultimately voted AF. The problem is, like, I'm not sure how the alt resolves the links, and if it does, then it doesn't solve the AF, and there's some disadds to that method, which I will get to. I guess my fundamental problem is like, you keep asking the question of like, what is a beloved community, what is a beloved community, and they kind of spin that question back at you, which is just like, well, what is the method of the alternative? And ultimately, I'm not quite sure what the difference is between the AFS method and kind of like the negs method in the context of the link arguments. And in general, I'm not like super convinced of the strength of these arguments, and without an alternative that totally solves the AF, it's difficult for me to vote negative. Now, I think that your debating on this is really good, but this AF is also very difficult to debate in general, and so, I don't know, it's tough. So, the next thing, well, I'll get to like the substance of my decision, but the kind of next thing I think is that you say competing performances means that there are no permutations. That also means that there are no picks, right? And so it's insufficient for you to simply explain the alternative as whatever the AF did minus beloved community. You need to actually go through and explain what it is that community without sacrifice would look like, and why that method is better for addressing oppression. I ultimately kind of vote on their James evidence. This argument is just kind of that the matrices of oppression prove that everyone relates to the structure of anti-blackness, even if identities are constituted kind of differently within that, which I think gets them a couple things. The first is that they solve the impact to the K in the link arguments to some degree, because they're not simply like a recreation of the type of oppressive communities like liberalism, because they are a kind of radical rejection of the fundamental antagonism that exists within civil society. Second is that the racial rape DA was not answered by the 2NR, which is, I think, kind of a dissad to the negatives method, because you cannot explain kind of the reality of racial rape as something that does exist. Which means that saying kind of the community not based on sacrifice, I don't know if that's the exact wording of the alternative, but it becomes problematic because the AF is impact turning this. Some people, ideas, and methods should be excluded if we are ever to account for things like anti-black violence, prison violence, racial rape. For example, we probably shouldn't include the police in our beloved communities if we want to kind of resolve oppression. Or we should be violent against the police. But those experiencing oppression can have their kind of lived difference appreciated for, related to, and accounted for within the beloved community. I think that this community, K in general, is not really great about the beloved community because the specificity of their evidence describing the ability of the beloved community to overcome anti-blackness as a fundamental antagonism. The Bergner evidence you gave me is, I think, definitely the best evidence that you get handed me, but I don't think that this is, I think that this should be the focus of the debate and not this like community link argument. It's kind of like a secondary link argument that you went for that I don't think was explained as well in the context of the evidence. Yeah, I guess so the app is like impact turning some of your like link arguments / all like inside outside. Like we do need some degree of inside and outside, but they resolve kind of your link arguments because they break down the worst part of creating a dichotomy in which some people must be outside, because some people always have to be outside if we are ever going to resolve kind of certain types of oppression. But that doesn't mean that we can't account for individuated differences in experiencing that oppression within something like the beloved community. Does that make sense?
Do you think there's any kind of alternative that would resolve the partner piece of evidence that, like the link?
Yeah, you should. Well, you'd have to explain this more, but like maybe just instead go for the arguments just like we should not understand anti-blackness as ontological. Or as an antagonism. And then say that we have to instead be only accounted toward, we should only be oriented towards perhaps lived reality or lived experience. And that way I think that you can create a kind of, you can solve this like argument about like we need to create more like individuated attention to women and the way that they experience these things. I don't know. And that their focus on, because this evidence, the James evidence is good, but it does say that anti-blackness is foundational and fundamental and comes before all other types of suffering. And so I think that you need to get ahead of that claim a little bit and say that that's something that's problematic. Like we shouldn't put anti-blackness on like a single plane upon which all other oppressions are sprouted from, and instead we need to create kind of a plane of equivalence upon which like different types of oppressions are discussed. What I thought was the best part of the 2NR actually was the example you gave at the bottom when you were like their strategy would exclude disabled people because they're unable to kind of stand up and fight in an armed struggle against anti-blackness. Like I think those type of examples, if there were more of those, it would be much easier to latch on to the core of that link argument, because the examples that you're giving, while I understand they're just like examples, make it seem like you're attacking a straw man. For example, being like liberalism says, you know, citizen, non-citizen. I understand that and why communities kind of necessitate that outside. What you need to do is contextualize that to the AF. Like why, like, and give examples in the context of the AF. Like what oppressed people would be excluded from starting from a methodology where anti-blackness is fundamental antagonism. Yeah.
One question on that there. How could we better orient, I guess, our answer to like there are certain people that are in the revolution and some people that are not? Because what we're trying to frame is that there's not like a certain body or enabled armed revolution that happens post the 1AC, but instead discussions that we have.
Then you need to be more explicit saying that.
Okay.
Because
should I have started that from 1AC process or?
I don't know. Like maybe, sure. It should definitely be like 1AR on. But yeah, you should make clear that it's not just about armed struggle. It's about like those who are able to participate should participate, like how they can if they're oriented towards a certain type of like reduction in oppressive violence.
Okay.
Because I thought that their link argument about like disabilities was interesting, but yeah.
Do you think I should have like was the 2AC like alright, or could time be allocated better in certain places?
Your tags for cards and just the parts where you're just like talking are way too long. Just like looking at these blocks, like you should edit these. I mean, they're so like this is like a 2AR to this argument. What you've handed me. This is not like a 2AC to this argument. So like your arguments, the content of your argument is good, Emma, but you should reduce them, like remove extraneous phrases so that you can save these blocks for the 1AR and the 2AR. Because you read like one card in the 2AC. And like, I mean, it's a good card, but like you should have like read some more cards maybe.
Two shits longer than the card.
Yeah, there were a couple times where I was just like, dang, the tag is so much longer than the card. Like, it's just like, which is fine. Like I understand, like I appreciate the explanation, but I think that in order to be more efficient, perhaps you could save some of this explanation for the 1AR and 2AR.
I feel you.
Well, yeah, it's like, did Hank write that? He wrote it, and then there's like, he wrote more, like a bunch more on the side. It's also, the problem with, it's like, I don't even care that it's like that much talking versus cards, but you need to diversify the talking. Like, I wouldn't care if you made like a way more like analytics than cards. I don't even care if you like read more cards. I just think you need to diversify the amount of arguments you make, and so you need to be more efficient about a lot of this stuff. And it also is just like, it's difficult to flow these paragraphs. Like I had a lot of difficulty like flowing in the 2AC just because I was like, is this a new argument? And so there were parts of the 2AC where I just like floated just like straight down. I was just like, I don't know if I should like hit space now or like, yeah, so that's structurally my advice. I mean, I think the content of all those arguments are good. Yeah. Okay. Really good debating.